everyone and welcome to another episode of The Jamie Hughes Show. My name as always is Jamie Hughes and today I'm going to be giving you my review of Solo, a Star Wars story. Now if you want to keep up to date with all the latest movie news and reviews then make sure you hit that subscribe button, and as always my videos, this review may include spoilers so you have now been warned. Solo, a Star Wars story is so much fun. It was seriously so fun. Now if I'm being totally honest, I wasn't really excited about going to see it. I wasn't hyped for it like I have been for every other Star Wars film. It was a movie that I felt was maybe a little unnecessary, but now that I've seen it, I am so glad we've got this movie because what a fun addition to the Star Wars universe this film is. It's seriously the most fun I've ever had watching a Star Wars film. And that is the biggest takeaway from this movie, is how fun this movie is. It's so damn fun. It doesn't have this overhanging sense of dread and danger and despair like we had with Rogue One and like we've seen implemented into the Skywalker story. It's just light, bright, fun entertainment, and that's what it needed to be. It needed to encapsulate the kind of aloof persona of Han Solo, and I think it did that perfectly. And that's not to say that there aren't serious moments in this movie, because there are some serious and quite poignant movies. I felt a little lump in my throat at points, but I think the reason why the kind of more poignant and more heartfelt scenes worked in this movie is because they were very contrasting to the kind of fun elements that were going on around it. A couple of examples where I thought that the seriousness worked really well was with L3 when she was killed and she shut down and she kind of died in Lando's arms. I thought that was a very poignant scene for a character that we had been introduced to not 20 minutes before, so I think that had a really good impact. And also at the end of the movie with Bennett getting shot by Han and dying in his arms, I thought Woody Harrelson had some really great facial expressions in that scene. But as I said, this movie is just so fun, so fun. And I mentioned Woody Harrelson there, and I also want to mention how great the rest of the cast were in a Solo. I thought this is the best ensemble cast we've ever seen in a Star Wars movie. I've already mentioned him, but Woody Harrelson for me was my personal favourite as Beckett. I thought he was so good. Seriously, the best performance in this movie for me. I thought Emilia Clarke gave a great performance as well. She was in it a lot more than I thought she was going to be. She had quite a prominent role in this film. I thought she was great. Donald Glover, brilliant as Lando. Really was looking forward to seeing his performance, and I think he nailed it. Paul Bettany was great. Tandy Newton had a really small part in this film, but she was brilliant. I really would have liked to have seen more of her. And also, I'm going to butcher his name, I know I am. Alden Ehrenreich. I can't say it. But the guy that played Han, I thought he was pretty solid. I thought he was actually pretty decent as Han. I think he definitely grew into the role. He was a little bit shaky in the film's first act, but as the story progressed and you could see how much the character was developing and you could see how much he had been developing the character, I actually thought he was a pretty good Han. And I did like the fact that they tried to tell this story as his own individual Han and not try and kind of caricature Harrison Ford's performance as Han Solo. I thought it was a very individual performance, and I think it worked really well. And speaking of individuality, that's what I loved so much about Solo as well, is how individual this film felt. Yes, it's a Star Wars film, but we've seen with a lot of the other Star Wars films, well, the past three that have come out with Rogue One, The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, is that they've really tried to play on that nostalgia, and they've really tried to almost force a lot of the Star Wars isms onto us. But what I really liked about Solo is that it had its own identity. Yes, it referenced and it almost visited Star Wars, like it was like a slight nudge and a wink at Star Wars, rather than forcing those references onto us. Yes, there were a couple that were in there and were a little bit cheesy, but I thought for the most part, I thought this film had its own identity, and I think that really added to my experience of enjoying this film, because I could almost differentiate it from Star Wars even though it was deeply rooted within Star Wars, if that makes any sort of sense. Now, as you can tell, I really enjoyed Solo, a Star Wars story, but I do have a couple of issues with it. One of those being that I felt like they did underutilize a few characters. As I said, the cast is great, and I do feel like we had some very well-developed characters in this film, but there were a couple that I was really disappointed we didn't get to see more of, and they actually died quite early in the film, and that was Tandy Newton's character. I felt like she could have had a really integral role in being the kind of moral compass within a sense between Beckett and Han. I think she had a really great role that she was playing, and it felt like that role was kind of cut a little bit too short. And also, I was so gutted when Rio died as well, the character Rio, because again, I thought he was a really interesting character, and we only got to see a very small amount of him on screen. So I suppose that's not a negative within a sense, because I wanted to see more of these characters, and I felt like they could have impacted the story a lot more than they already did. And then this another point isn't really a criticism, it's just kind of me probably thinking out loud, but as I said in a little bit earlier on in this review, is that this film does have its own identity, and I think you could have made this film without Han and it still would have worked. Yes, obviously having the Han Solo name to this movie, with it being in the Star Wars franchise, definitely piques people's interest, but you could have had this been a kind of early Star Wars Rebel story and it still would have worked. I think it was so good that you could have took Han out of this movie and it still would have worked. Again, it's not really criticism, it's just me thinking out loud. And the only kind of other issues I have is there were maybe a few story inconsistencies in this film, because I don't think that it's ever been referenced before that Han was in the Galactic Empire's kind of pilot academy for like 3 years. I don't think that was ever referenced. I feel like that is a point in Han's character arc that maybe would have been addressed in the original Star Wars trilogy. I'm not really sure. There were a few couple of others, but they were not as kind of niggling as that one. But that being said, that is my review of Star Wars, a Star Wars story, Solo. I absolutely loved it. Seriously, such a fun movie, and definitely what we needed after kind of having the more serious films of Rogue One and The Last Jedi, and for how controversial The Last Jedi was, just for Star Wars to kind of feel like it's gone back a little bit to its roots, and just having this really fun story was great. And I tell you what was really refreshing to see is that there wasn't this big generic space battle at the end of this movie either. It was very much on a smaller scale, and I think that really added to my enjoyment of this movie. So if you guys have seen Solo, a Star Wars story, let me know what you thought about it, as always, down in those comments below. And if you did enjoy this video and you want to keep up to date with all the latest movie news and reviews, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the very next episode of The Jamie Hughes Show. Ta-ra!